So I've got a mega video for you today because you're going to be seeing the side of publishing from a bestseller's perspective. So recently one of my coloring books officially became a bestseller on Amazon, albeit just for one day, but the sales are pretty reflective of that fact, with the book sitting in at around 3,486 sales so far in March. Now, recently in my Facebook group, I mentioned if people would be interested in a mammoth case study for my next batch of books. Okay, so inside this video, you're going to be seeing some of the next batch of those books. Okay, so what I wanted to do in this video was to share some of the processes that led to becoming a bestseller by demonstrating them on those next upcoming activity books, okay, that I've taken the same approach with. And this video isn't going to be your typical, hey, just make better books type of video, but we're actually going to go and take a look behind the scenes to see what it really takes to create a best-selling book. Okay, so you're going to be taking a look at the new books, the new book covers, the branding, I guess you could call it, the strategies, and pretty much everything that I think you need to implement into your publishing business to make actual great money from publishing in big niches. Okay, and I think you're going to see things inside this video that you've never seen before, and I can promise you, you cannot neglect this side of publishing if you want to make big sales. Okay, so let's just start with the newer book that I'm working on now. I've been promising this for a long time, to start working on a case study for this book, and only recently have I gotten around to doing this. So that on the whole is a different project, but what I want to do is to show you some of the processes that I take to give my books the best chance of making sales in big niches. Now, obviously, there is a chance that the whole thing will tank and make no sales whatsoever. Of course, there's no guarantees. But let's take a look at some of the things that you can do to greatly improve your chances of making sales. Okay, so before I show off the books and everything, the interiors and the book covers and things like that, at the end of the video we have this, what I've called the plan coming up, that I'm going to explain pretty much the entire process again and how it all sort of links together. I want you to stick around for this because it's going to be pretty insane. But let's just talk about some of the factors that I can actually show off for you regarding my books. Okay, so the book that we're working on at the moment is this maze book. Okay, I say we, I mean me. It's a maze book for kids, and it has 100 mazes in it. So I always talk about on my channel the importance of having a great book cover when it comes to selling in these kind of broad, I guess, saturated, competitive niches, right? So these are the niches where loads and loads of sales are happening, right? We all know that maze books are popular, for example, okay? But in order to compete, there's a few things that we need to do, and we're going to start with the book cover. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is show you some of the processes that I take to sort of finalize on the book cover that I'm going to be happy with actually selling with the book at the end of this all. Okay, so the first step that I tend to take, and all this is going to tie together, we're going to be taking a look at individual assets and how we can reuse them in different books and optimize all sorts of things. Okay, so this gets pretty exciting. So basically, the first thing that I like to do is to kind of have this sort of concept image drawn first. Okay, so the designers are pretty happy to go ahead and do this, just to give you an idea of what you're going to be working with. So we went with this image here, and then we thought, let's color it in to see how it looks. Now, I wasn't happy with this image. It's okay, but like I say, if we're going to be getting into these bigger niches, we have to have something a little bit better. So what I did was I took the image and then I sent it to someone else to color, basically. So what I identified that the problem was on this page was that the colors just seemed too flat. Okay, so I sent this image to someone else to do the coloring part. It was only like $20, that you don't have to break the bank when it comes to having someone color your books in. But what we can see here is the difference is immense when it comes to having someone that knows how to actually color your book cover in. Okay, so what's happened here, as you can see, if I just scroll in, you can see that what they've done is kind of give the characters some depth on the front cover. Okay, so it looks, in my opinion, a million times better than what came back here. Okay, that was okay, that was fine, but we want something that looks much nicer. Okay, so the other thing here, and this is a big tip that we're going to be using throughout the course of this video, is making sure that the files that you receive from your outsourcer, that you have a certain type of file that you can reuse to create more books and more content with quicker. Okay, so this is pretty insane. So typically, most of you watching this video, you're going to be outsourcing your book covers, right? Or a lot of people are going to be outsourcing their book covers. So when the book cover comes back to you, what you'll typically find, since this is all hand drawn, it looks really nice, what you'll find is that it's going to come back as one image, and there's nothing more that you can do with it. So the big problem that we face here is if we want changes, we have to go back and forth with our designer, okay? And given time zones and you know, things getting lost in translation, this can take up a lot of time. So the big tip for you here when it comes to creating these books, because ultimately what this video is about is giving yourself creative freedom, okay? So ultimately you have the say. At the end of the day, you have to have the say with what goes up on Amazon. This is your product. You're the one that makes the final decision. So you have to have these delivered to you in a certain way. So what we did was to have the individual elements sent to us, okay? So for example, we have the maze title sent to us, we have the sign sent to us, we have the leaf sent to us, we have the X sent to us, and we have the subtitles sent to us as well, okay? So when we get these back in the files back in this way, what we then have is the creative freedom to make it look however we want, okay? So if I didn't want the X in there, I can get rid of that. If I want to resize this and have this up here instead, I can do that. If I want to have this hanging off of a different part, I can do that as well. If I want to have the leaf in a different position, then we can grab that as well somehow. I think I've just screwed that up. Yeah, okay. But you understand here, I can basically take all these elements because they've been sent to me in the way in which I can retain the creative freedom, okay? So that's mega important when it comes to speeding up the process of your book creations. Okay, so the more elements that we have access to, the quicker we can make our vision become clearer. Okay, so what I like to do when it comes to working on the book covers, so this is what I'm doing with the coloring books as well, is just loading up Canva and putting it out as many different versions as possible. Okay, so tweaking things, trying out different fonts, trying out different positions and things like that. Okay, so spending some real time until it just looks right. Okay, so that's a big factor here, and at the end of it all, you'll be able to be like, yes, this is the one that I want here. Okay, but I know what you're thinking, that this isn't particularly groundbreaking, it's nothing exciting, but what if I said that we could take our existing assets and use them in a way where we can create more content, and not just more content, but I'm talking about more books as well. So let me show you right now how we're going to be using the assets to create new books from, and of course how we can use them for the interior of the book as well. So I'm going to show you the interior for this book in just a second, and the processes that go behind having that created. So first I'm going to show you how we can reuse these assets to create new books. So basically what's happening with this brand is that I want to have other books branching off it as well. Okay, so within this brand we're going to be talking about we're going to be having books like how to draw books, dot to dot books, color by number, and maybe spot the difference as well. I can't recall what all of them were. You're going to see the plan at the end of the video with all the different niches that I'm going for. So when it comes to optimizing, what we want to do is to take some of the characters from the maze book and then turn them into a new book. So for example, what we can do is take some of the characters from the maze book and then turn them into how to draw step-by-step pages. Okay, so for example, we've taken one of the animal assets from inside the maze book and generated it into a step-by-step how to draw page. So what I mean by that is that, for example, let's try and use one of these guys here. So if we had the lion, now of course, like I keep reiterating, we have all these individual assets at our disposal. If we have the lion and we want to turn that into a how to draw page, keep it in mind, if we've had the file sent to us in a specific way to our liking, we can go ahead and implement this into one of our other projects, i.e. the how to draw book. So if I'm taking that asset, which is the line which we already have created for us, we can go ahead and turn this into one of the pages for our how to draw book. And then what we're going to come out with is a nice how to draw page for our next activity book. Okay, so we've reused this asset here, which we were using inside of the maze book, so we could use that on the cover. And of course, we're going to be using some of these on the interior for our book as well. So hopefully this is all kind of like linking together now, how you can take control over the files that you own and start creating more content the way that you want content created, so you're not going back and forth hiring people to do impossible tasks and things like that. Okay, so what I like to do here when it comes to creating the interior for the book, if it comes to a book that I think is going to require some more attention, like the maze books, for example, or the coloring books, is I like to bring them over to Figma and just have all my images in one place, so I can kind of just visualize the bigger picture and then make changes from there. So there's a couple more reasons why I like using Figma that I'll get into in just a second. But for example, what I was doing was creating the mazes and then introducing the different elements into them, positioning and having everything the way that I want it, and then putting everything back into Figma just so I can see the bigger picture, and then decide from there kind of what I need to do to complete this book. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is introducing more maze pages in between each of these kind of story pages, just to fill out the book to have 100 different mazes inside it. Okay, so the other reason that I like to use Figma is because it does help when it comes to communicating with your designer. So obviously I didn't need this with the maze pages because I was doing these myself, but what you can do, and just to use an example here, is that if you're working with a designer and you don't want to, an illustrator, sorry, and if you don't want to go back and forth with your communications with them, what you can do, and this is what I did with the coloring book project, is that you can put the entirety of your book into Figma and then just leave notes as to what you want changed. Okay, so at the end of the project, after you've left notes for your illustrator or whoever to make the changes that you want, you can then go ahead and pay them. Typically, like I said in my last video, you'll be looking at around sort of $30 to $50 worth of changes. Okay, so what you can do, and let's say we just use this image for example here, if my illustrator is creating this page here with all the different characters on it, and they've hand drawn the background and things like that. So if I wanted to leave them a note for changes that I wanted, and like I say, this was more relevant on a coloring book project where it was less hands-off for me. What we can do is just come across to the note section here and just leave a note for them. So whenever they log in and start working, they can see what I want them to do with the project. Okay, so they can come back, they can edit the image or do whatever, and then they can put that the revisited image back into Figma for me to check out. Okay, so doing that allows you to save a ton of time when it comes to communicating with your designer, because time zones are very real and things getting lost in translation, and what you can do is just leave a note for them. So for example, you could have, if I wanted this, let's say this was a coloring book page, you wanted them to add more birds or something like that. I don't want any more birds added, but you can just go ahead and put that in, and when they load up, they're going to be alerted to what the change is. It's going to refer to the page and they can check it out, and then once they've done that, they can come across, resolve that, that's going to go away, and they're going to come back with the new image for my approval. Okay, and again, the same thing happened here. So what I wanted was to have a sort of certificate congratulations page at the end of the book, and the designer was just putting their ideas out there so they could quickly come across and use Figma and just create this page here. And again, of course, they can reuse some of the assets that they've already created and put them into this page, and again, that's going to add a ton of value to our books when we're doing things this way. Okay, so that was the book cover, the process of making sure that we have a high quality book cover, and of course the process we went through to make sure that we have the interior the way that we want it as well. Now I'm going to touch back upon this in just a second, but what I'm showing you here is the overall plan when it comes to creating a best-selling book. And now I know, like, creating a best-selling book, it seems ridiculous, but it is doable even in 2023 as an independent publisher. It is doable. I'm not saying it will happen, and what I'm always trying to preach in my videos is that you want to shoot for unrealistic expectations, and you need to put in the effort and the work that you would need to get there. And even if you fall short, which you probably will, you're still going to end up hopefully making a boatload of sales. Now, I don't want to sell hope to anyone and say, look, you can all get into competitive niches and make tons of sales, because the reality is that there's a lot that goes into it, right? So we've seen a couple of the aspects here. We looked at optimizing our content, and we looked at some of the productivity, the ways that we can increase our productivity as well. Okay, so let's just take a look at the plan here that I have beautifully created inside of Canva, and we're going to take a look at each section here. Now, this is all regarding the activity book brand, so you've seen the first two books that are going into that. So let's quickly touch back upon the topics that we have covered already, which is productivity and optimizing the content. Okay, so let me just zoom out here. And yes, this is unnecessarily messy and complex looking, but I think you're going to get the point here. So let's just go and do this section by section. We've got the optimizing the content, which we looked at briefly. So basically we have the first book we created, which is the maze book, which contained quite a lot of different characters and assets. Okay, so if you remember me saying we were having them created in a way that we could reuse them for different books. Okay, so for example, what we're doing is taking some of the characters from here, using them inside of our how to draw books here, like this one here. And then what we can do from here, and I've really not demonstrated the way that I hope this would come out, but basically what I'm saying is that if, for example, we had another how to draw book made and we had a ton of different characters for that book, so imagine this is a separate book that we've decided to create, we can then go ahead and reuse the assets. So the full image, which would be this one here, we can reuse that into a second maze book. And yes, like I say, I've demonstrated that horrendously inaccurately, but I think you get the point here. We're basically reusing the content to make more books. And of course this is not going to be considered duplicate content because we're creating sort of how to draw pages out of these, right? Okay, so moving back now to productivity. So what we had was again, so we were using Figma to kind of to present everything in one big way, where we weren't going back and forth with different files. We were leaving notes for each other, and it's just a really great way to keep things tidy. And it's super important that if you're going to try and run things like a business, which I think you should be, that you need to really focus on getting organized. And I found for whatever books I'm creating, if I'm working with someone, that using a program like Figma or a website like Figma is a great way to exchange ideas much quicker. And you don't, like I said, you don't have to keep sending files back and forth. And of course, leaving the notes is really handy when it comes to creating the project that you want. Okay, so from there, productivity wise, of course, we need to use when it comes to certain books, we can use software to speed up the content creation. And then, like I said, in Canva, we were basically creating multiple versions of the book cover until we were happy with the one that we got. Okay, so doing this this way in Canva, where we're kind of just layering things out, chopping and changing things, again, it's going to save a ton of time when it comes to creating the book cover, because if you have the individual assets sent to you, then you're not going to need to keep making those changes back and forth with your freelancer. Okay, so let's move on now. So the main two sort of factors that we were looking at here with the book cover and the interior. Now, once we have that nailed, and that's why we're doing things like really focusing on our productivity and the processes involved to create something really high quality. The reason why I want to focus on that is because once we start implementing marketing toward our books, that's when all the sales are going to start coming in. Okay, hopefully anyway. So when it comes to marketing, there are two things that we kind of need to have going for us, and that is our launch plan and the branding of our books. Okay, so linking the brand of our books, right? So just to quickly touch upon the launch plan. And again, this is something that when I come to create a bigger case study out of all of this, I'll include in much more detail. But basically, the launch plan is going to consist of pricing our books correctly for getting optimal sales, and then of course running ads from launch. Okay, so running ads is a big deal when it comes to launching your book and having a successful book in a competitive niche. Okay, so the other factor was being linking the brand, basically. Okay, so we could look in the future at creating things like websites and capturing emails and things like that, but it's slightly more advanced, and I can tell you now, you need a lot of sales to build an email list from your books. Okay, so for now, we could really focus on two things to link our brand, and that is by having an author central page and by having, of course, the same pen name for all our books as well. The other way that we can do things, and this is the easiest way to link our brand, is by using A+ content. So once we have A+ content set up for our book, what we're going to be able to do is link all the other books in that brand on the sales page, the listing page on Amazon, using A+ content, so people, when they come to this book, they can check out the other books as well. So I want to give people as much chance as possible to go and check out our other books as well. Okay, so this moves me on to time wasting. Okay, so when it comes to making money, like you have to spend your time where it's going to give you the best return on that investment of time. Okay, so things like optimizing your content, increasing your productivity, working on your marketing. Like, these are things where if you spend time, there is going to be a result at the end of it that is going to reward you financially. Okay, that's pretty much factual. If you focus on these aspects, you are going to increase your chance of making money, and that time is going to be spent wisely. Okay, so when you put your time into things that aren't going to be making you money or aren't going to make much difference, you're going to be wasting time that could be spent on better pursuits, right? Like these other three factors. So after doing this for years, there are certain things that I just don't tend to waste my time with anymore. And these are things that, and of course this is just my opinion, but there are things that people have pushed quite heavily for a long time. And I think these are things that kind of make sense, so that's why people pursue them, because they make sense. But honestly, I think there are just certain things that you will just waste your time because they don't give you that return on that time. So for example, social media marketing. So we're talking things like, and I've been here and I've tried this, like Pinterest, TikTok, and whatever the other ones are. I can't remember the other ones, Facebook perhaps, I'm not quite sure. Everything that I've tried outside of Amazon has failed, or if it has had any kind of result, it's been minimal. So when it comes to marketing, spending your time on Amazon, actually getting the product bang on, that's one of the best things that you can do for marketing. And the second best thing that you can do is to run ads from Amazon. So using Amazon's own services, Amazon's ad services, that's what's going to get you eyes to your book quickest. It's what's going to make you sales the quickest. It's an incredible tool, and I highly recommend that, especially when it comes to like these competitive niches. I highly recommend that people look at using Amazon ads as opposed to trying to create TikTok videos and things like that. But again, if you've had success with TikTok videos and things like that, I'd love to hear about it, because I haven't. So the second thing is niche paralysis. Now, in my opinion, this comes from people trying to find the perfect niche, right? So we always get told that you need to find books that have X amount of reviews on the first page, X amount of search results. And by the way, people don't even know how the search results work when they're showing these things off. But this is something that I think ultimately, when you put out so much criteria for a niche, you end up getting this kind of niche paralysis, right? And you just end up doing nothing because you spend all this time trying to find the perfect niche, when reality is that like most niches now are competitive. You're going to be competing against a lot of books basically. So when it comes to the niche research phase, my recommendation to people is, if they're serious about this, is that they just go over to Amazon, use a BSR extension tool, start looking around Amazon, and then just go with a niche that interests them, that has a consistently low BSR on the front page. And that's kind of it. Like, I've never worried about the amount of reviews that I have to compete against. And anyone that tells you that you can't compete against a book that has like 5,000 reviews on the first page has not got any experience with that whatsoever. Because let me tell you, all of my books, they start with 0 reviews. They're all in pretty competitive niches, and they all end up, well, not all of them, but a lot of them end up on the first page and make sales against those books that have got thousands and thousands of reviews, and books that have been there for years. And the reason is because people like the variety. If you have a good book and you put yours out there in front of all these other books that have got tons of reviews, you might not get as many sales as them, but who cares? Like, if you still end up with 3,000 sales a month or whatever it is, then that's still extremely good. So the next big time waste, in my opinion, is guesswork. So by guesswork, I mean not taking any sort of plan of action, basically. So a lot of people, when it comes to publishing, they just want to put their books out there. Maybe they hear about some hot niche, they put the books out there, they put some titles together, put some books together, put the book cover together, put an interior together, and they pretty much leave everything down to guesswork. Now, the reason why I put this under the time wasting section is because when you guess like this, when you rely on guesswork and you just sort of hoping and guessing, as it were, you're going to end up not making any sales. Like, that's the reality, is that you have to think about your project. Okay, so when you put a book out and it doesn't make any sales, what do? You go ahead and you create another book. And that's what we've been told to do, isn't it? We keep pumping out these books until finally some of them make sales, right? So the amount of time that you're going to be wasting publishing books, because it takes ages to publish books, it really does. Even low content books, there's quite a lot of work that goes into it, and for nothing to happen at the end of it all is a massive time waste. So I'd rather people try and enter these crazy niches, make an insane book, focus on their quality, productivity and marketing, and actually have a chance of making some really good sales instead of just guessing and throwing out low content books all over the place. Okay, so before I start ranting too much, let's just go ahead and move on and talk about the actual niches within the brand. So we've obviously seen the maze book that I've been showing off and the how to draw book, which I've shown off. From there, we're going to be creating color by number books, dot to dot, search and find, and possibly spot the difference. Okay, so these are all very broad niches. So what I'm going to do in this part of the video is just explain why I'm entering into these and also touch upon ad spend, because there is a misconception that if you want to compete in broad niches like this, that you have to spend literal thousands every single month on each book just to have a chance, which is not true. And I'm going to show you inside my ads account in just a second, but let's just talk about the niches that we're going after. Okay, so obviously we have the maze book. Now what I like to see when it comes to doing my niche research, and I've touched upon this in my last few videos, is that I want to see a couple independently published books that have a very low ranking, and the rest of the books to have a consistently low ranking as well. So for example, we have a book here in the maze niche that is 1,000. We have another one here that is 1,000, another one that's 3,000, another one that's 5,000, 13,000. So again, this is the extent pretty much of my niche research when it comes to these kind of broad niches, like, because you should be at a point when it comes to your niche research where you can look on the front page and establish whether a niche has got traffic going to it. So if you look at this and you look at these BSRs, you can assume that these books have a ton of traffic going to them. So the assumption here is that if you create a great book inside of this niche and you end up on the first page, like you run ads to get onto the first page, you will also end up making good sales. Okay, so the next one we looked at was the how to draw books, and again, all you need to do is take a look at how consistently low the BSRs are. Some of them are incredibly low, even ranked at like 200, 400. There's some extreme traffic going to those type of books. So again, you're going to make the assumption that if we end up on the first page, we're going to be making a ton of sales. And the same goes for color by number books. Just go across the first page and we're looking to see consistently low BSRs. Possibly these are not quite as good as the other two, but from what I can see, we have some really low BSRs going here as well. Okay. And then again, with the dot to dot books, we can see, you know, we basically want to see what life is like on these first few lines, because that's what I want to shoot for. That's the type of positioning that I want to get on, is the top of the first page. Okay, so again, not as good as the last few, but still pretty good. And if we do end up on the first page, I'm not going to say we're guaranteed to make sales, but there's a very high chance. And the same goes for the search and find books. Okay, so I've not done enough research on this one. It's just a thought that I might be entering into this niche as well. But again, just get the BSR extension, look to see how consistently low the BSRs are on the first page, and that should be enough to tell you that if you end up on the first pages, then you're going to be able to make a ton of sales. Okay, so just to quickly touch upon the ad spend here, and like I said, people very much under the impression that you have to spend thousands of dollars to get ranked in, to get seen in these type of niches. If we come across to my ads account here, we can see that this month I spent $250 on ad campaigns with just 99 orders and a 39% ACOS. And the result from this is well over 3,500 sales this month. So actually, given this only includes one of the books that we're talking about here, it's actually probably over 4,000 for all books included. And what we're looking at the result from that ad spend, we only had 99 sales, but when we get ranked for books that have got a ton of traffic going to them, you can rely pretty heavily on the organic sales to sort of carry you. Okay, so that's really why I don't worry too much about my ad spend anymore. Like, it serves a purpose to get my books ranked in these competitive niches, and then the organic traffic from there does a very good job. So like I say, 99 sales come from ads, and 3,448. Actually, this is inaccurate because this is the ad spend for all my books, and this is the results for just one book. Okay, so realistically, it's a fair bit more than 3,500, but you understand the point here. Okay, and this is exactly why, like, I know it's not for everyone. I know there's money involved in that, and that cannot be for everyone's. You know, not everyone can pursue that. But at the same time, I think if I'm going to talk about publishing on my channel, then I want to give people the absolute best chance they have of not just making a few sales, but I'm talking about making life-changing amounts of sales and life-changing amounts of money. And what I think the best pursuit is to look at getting into these more competitive niches that are going to bring you back a ton of money if you get things right. So working on getting those things right was the point of this video. Hopefully when we talk about things like optimizing your content, your productivity, and your marketing. So these are the main factors that I think people need to take into consideration when it comes to competing in these niches that have all those really glorious and appealing amounts of traffic going to them. So I think you have to take these steps, right? And the thing is, I'm not saying that you cannot niche down within these niches and spend less money on your projects and still make good sales, because I 100% believe that you can. But the thing is, when it comes to all these fantastic and really glamorous looking niches that have all these sales going to them, if anyone is showing these to you, anyone is showing these niches to you and saying that you don't need to make any effort, or you can just rely on the niche, you don't have to make any effort when it comes to your marketing and your productivity and things like that, I just don't think it's accurate. And this is years now that I've been working on leading up to this point where I can enter into these niches and start seeing those sales. And this is everything. Like, these are the things that really, really matter, in my opinion, if you want to get into these sort of bigger niches and start seeing great sales. And I highly recommend that everyone works toward that. No matter what your budget is, I think there's always something that you can do where you can start leading yourself to optimizing your content better, to increasing your productivity, to working on your marketing and just creating better books. I don't think the investment is as big as people think it needs to be. And I think it's a case of, would you rather work and learn things that are going to help you produce these type of books, or would you rather spend your time, just keep making word search after word search after word search after low content book after low content book after planner after planner after planner, and not seeing anything for it, when you could be learning how to actually compete in the niches that are going to reward you financially incredibly well? So that's just my opinion, but this is pretty much the end of the video now. All ranting has finished. So make sure that you stay tuned for my channel. There's not going to be any sort of structure when it comes to the videos that are coming out lately, because there's going to be quite a few of them where I'm talking more about all these type of books that I've been mentioning inside of this video. So make sure that you have the notification bell turned on, all those good things, because I've got some very, very awesome videos coming out that are completely linked to this one here. Okay, so that's it. I'll see you very, very soon.